Free love in the 60s was a bunch of hippies in San Francisco. Free love didn't really get to the suburbs of America until the 70s. And that's when everyone was smoking pot, everyone was listening to rock and roll, and everyone was having lots and lots of sex.
You're dirty and sweet, heading back, don't look back, I love you. You're dirty and sweet, oh yeah.
If you look at the 60s, when people were sort of fighting to make it happen, in the 70s, they were celebrating it happening. And it was a very different vibe.
Get it on, bang a gong, get it on.
Every kind of sexual experience was available. There were sexual adventures to be had at every turn.
Hey, ain't one man big enough for you, honey?
Now, do I look like the kind of girl one man would be enough for?
Get it on, bang a gong, get it on.
The 70s is the greatest blossoming of sexual freedom, activism, and experimentation in American history.
If you want to talk about sexual revolution, David Bowie was a sexual revolution unto himself. We started to get a glimpse of glam rock where the artists were androgynous.
He says he's a beautician.
That's when rock stars, when everybody tried to look gay when they weren't. That was great. That was fun because that was liberating to everybody.
It was cool or hip to be gay, and even edgier to be somehow gender transgressive.
Don't you ever shave?
Millions of people were tuned into it. And here you have these guys dressing like women, literally. The New York Dolls, Mick Jagger, Lou Reed.
You sing a lot about transvestites. Are you a transvestite or a homosexual? Sometimes. Which one? I don't know. What's the difference?
It brought the possibility of bisexuality and homosexuality into the popular consciousness.
Let's go gay now, pick up the gun, go, let's go gay now, pick up the gun.
Gay liberation was the next frontier.
The liberation of heterosexuals became inspiration to homosexuals. We thought if they can do that, we can have that too. And do your own thing has got to apply across the board.
Oh, you got to do your thing.
The Stonewall riots in New York in June of 1969 had really helped create a whole new climate.
Could you tell us what happened last night?
Yeah, it was a spontaneous uprising by homosexuals in retaliation to police brutality.
The cops have been hassling people there for a long time anyway. This was a bar of hustlers and drag queens, and they got just angry. The cops kept busting, so they fought back.
You feel like you want to scream. You're well letting off steam, scream on.
All over the past year, homosexuals have been coming out into public, refusing to hide in the closets, as we say.
Those people, they didn't realize it that night that this was going to go down in history, but it certainly was historical because it's when they finally said, no, we're not going to take it anymore.
The attitude by 1970 is we're not trying to fit into this society. We want a new society.
There's all kinds of signs. God loves us, can you? Committee for Homosexual Law Reform, Homosexual Civil Liberties Now.
Gays became political and did the most important thing they could, which was identify themselves as gay and as part of a political group.
If we're going to be jailed, we're going to be jailed together.
For we must be free, we will be free, we shall be free, because we are everywhere.
The gay liberation movement involves homosexual women as well as men, lesbians.
And me realizing that I was a lesbian sort of was like opening up a part of myself that it was just closed, that I never knew was there.
There's no doubt that lesbians were the overlooked wing of gay liberation. And I think it was because men were so much more flamboyant, outspoken, and visible. But women were always a part of gay liberation.
The gay liberation movement is only 2 years old. It has already achieved the repeal of sodomy laws in several states and drawn together many who support the gay life.
Homosexuality was basically illegal in all states until the state of Illinois made consenting acts between adults legal. And then one by one, other states followed suit.
Gay is obviously a lot more visible now than it used to be. The rest of the world is having to notice what it used to try to ignore, finding out that homosexuals no longer meekly melt away under the blast of scorn, ridicule, or hatred.
In the 1950s and 60s, the psychiatric profession had said homosexuality was a mental illness.
I felt like many clinicians that homosexuality was a sickness.
I remember thinking when I was 15 and attracted to boys that I'd better tell my parents really quickly and they could get me the right treatment that would cure me. Thank God I didn't, because I would have had electrodes attached to my balls in about 10 minutes. What happened to the people who did try to treat their natural instincts as a mental illness is really pretty terrifying.
One of the common methods of doing this is aversive conditioning. This involves showing the gay man pictures of nude males and shocking him with a strong electric current. He will be unable to get sexually aroused to the pictures, and hopefully he will be unable to get sexually aroused outside in other settings as well.
By the early 70s, gay activists had worked with the medical community to challenge the scientific basis of categorizing gay people as being mentally ill.
The American Psychiatric Association has voted to remove homosexuality from its list of so-called mental disorders.
That was a critical turning point because we are a culture that looks to its scientists and specifically looks to its doctors for the truth. And suddenly people had a new vantage point, a new perspective.
The liberation movement was all about bringing this out into the open. And slowly it began climbing out into the open.
And in the gay community, promiscuity becomes a real badge of freedom. It becomes part of their identity.
Suddenly you had baths, they would have orgy rooms in them. It was like kids being let loose in a candy store.
The Continental Baths was a bathhouse and nightclub. So people would go in there in towels and they would watch a show. And then suddenly there was a headliner attraction. It became show business.
She is the first great superstar at the Continental Baths. Bette Midler!
She was fabulous. There was nothing like her. She had the most eclectic show. She would talk about things that interested the audience. You know, all New York gay culture references.
They had me booked at Fire Island, Cherry Grove. Cherry Grove, I love it. Health spa for hairdressers. I was supposed to work at Cherry Grove, you see. I was supposed to sing. But they couldn't find room for me in the bushes.
She could turn on a dime. She would do something hysterically funny and something very serious and equally effective, and the audience would just go completely crazy.
I got you back to have
It became like a tourist attraction to the point where the core audience, gay guys, wouldn't go to the baths anymore because they were afraid they'd run into people. One night, this guy came running into the dressing room and saying, "I just saw my shrink in full leather gear." And so it was kind of scary.
Larger numbers of people began to really consider a kind of normalized acceptance and embrace of gay people and gay culture.
We really did see the personal and the political as the same thing. Having a boyfriend and walking down the street and holding his hand was making a political statement. And it was enormously exhilarating to feel that simply by expressing yourself, you were actually helping to change the world. You were starting a revolution.
In In the 70s, the sexual revolution begins to fragment. There are young people in their 20s. They would have their version of it. There's gay men, and they have their version of it. There's women, and they have their version of it.
The first issue of Ms. Magazine had an article called "The Sexual Revolution Wasn't Our War," because the revolution was not about women being able to say whether they wanted sex or not. It was about making more women sexually available to more men.
The women's movement began to question and challenge things like Playboy and things like the Playboy clubs.
I'm your bunny, Cindy. I'll be serving you tonight.
Hefner always said that he didn't believe in equality for the sexes and that he liked faithful, gentle, affectionate girls.
At a time when women were getting restless in our chains, Hefner was saying what men needed was to see carefully airbrushed photographs of what he referred to as the girl next door.
Hugh Hefner is my enemy. Hugh Hefner has built an empire based on oppressing women.
We had an early encounter, Hefner and I, on the Dick Cavett show in 1970.
The role that you have selected for women is degrading to women because you choose to see women as sex objects which deny their humanity and their femininity.
If you look at some of these really important figures in the sexual revolution and how they were going to deal with the feminists, like Hefner, there's a period where they're like a boxer in the ring, kind of back on their heels. They really quite don't know what to do.
You make them look like animals, yes. Women aren't bunnies, they're not rabbits, they're human beings.
All right.
It surprised him because he really thought of himself as the liberator.
Well, I was very surprised. It was out of left field.
The day that you are willing to come out here with a cottontail attached to your rear end.
I didn't have the language for responding to that kind of thing.
This turned into a roast Hefner evening. I'm sorry about that.
The notion that women are sexual objects is what makes the world go round. But of course they are. There wouldn't be another generation if both sexes weren't sexual objects.
The parallel that's usually made is, why don't you create a women's magazine with nude men? Hey, Helen Gurley Brown wants to put a man in Cosmopolitan.
I've been planning to run a male nude centerfold in Cosmopolitan. But I have been waiting to get someone very famous, very exemplary, to be that male nude centerfold.
I don't know why he said yes, but he did say yes.
The big stuff. Who do you think you are?
To have Burt Reynolds as a centerfold is part of the exercise in rebalancing and allowing what was not to be allowed. The idea of a man as a sex object.
It was a fun thing to do.
It's a charming picture. It was just delicious.
I was with Burt Reynolds making a movie called Seamus when that Cosmopolitan spread came out. Oh my gosh. We would go on location and the girls would be there waiting for Burt.
I could very easily be getting out of that car down there, and about 16 guys could be hitting me with Cosmopolitans instead of ladies trying to grab my tie. I did a crazy thing, and I expected to take a lot of flack from it.
At Cosmo, we were always handing out our own message, which was that sex was enjoyable.
I think the time is coming when women will look at a naked man's body and be turned on by it.
For the first time in the 60s and 70s, you had women talking really openly, writing openly about their sexual fantasies. Probably the most famous spokeswoman for the new view of sexuality was a woman named Erica Jong, who is a writer.
We live in a society which is absolutely crazy on the subject of sex.
I thought, why do we not have a book that tells us all about a woman's fantasies, a woman's fears?
She wrote about what she called the zipless.
I'm known as the lady who is the advocate of the zipless.
No commitment, no repercussion.
You get on a bus or a train or a plane and you see a beautiful man and you immediately are turned on by him and you go off together and you have this wonderful experience and you part without knowing each other's name.
This idea that a woman could want straightforward sexual pleasure with no strings attached, that was a pretty radical notion.
I don't know to what extent people realize how central sexual liberation was to the women's movement. Sexual satisfaction is part of their vision for a reformed society and gender relations.
Millions and millions of women had come to the realization that they did not want to live the lives of their mothers.
People were getting radicalized every day in 1970. Women got in touch with their rage.
Hundreds of thousands of women die from illegal abortions.
As soon as there was a women's movement, abortion became our first issue.
We are here to make known the unity of women behind the demand that abortion be a woman's right to choose. We were essentially saying, why is this the only medical procedure that is governed by law? It doesn't make sense.
A back alley abortion consists maybe of a coat hanger. I mean, you don't remove an appendix with a coat hanger. It's dangerous.
And women worked to change the law at every state.
In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
Roe v. Wade enunciated a whole new human right, reproductive freedom. Certainly as basic as freedom of speech or freedom of religion or assembly.
The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government.
What Roe v. Wade did was it sealed the sexual revolution in place.
What it did is it told women that they could actually change the law.
We all felt this sudden empowerment, and we felt as if nothing was ever going to stop us.
In the 1960s, there was swinging. There were articles in the New York Times about it. There were books about open marriage. Certainly, there were places like communes where people were experimenting. Sandstone was a whole other thing, at a whole other level.
Sandstone was a sort of a legend around Los Angeles. It was where people who were braver than I was, that's for sure, would go and do sexual adventuring at a level that I would have found very risky.
Sandstone was kind of the culmination of all the stuff I've been looking for, you know?
Sandstone fulfilled the lustiest fantasies of people who at other times were constrained by the prevailing morality. Could men and women, committed, married perhaps, could they have sex with other people without breaking up the primary relationship? I mean, to what degree can you be honest with your partner? And they thought that if you could be that honest, you would be more open about everything.
Groups of people, strangers to each other, friends with each other, could really experience what honest sexuality was all about. This was not the beginning of the sexual revolution. That was done by the kids. But we picked up on it and realized what powerful effects that was having.
All I can say for sure is that an awful lot of things are happening in our society. 5 years from now, it'll be an entirely different world.
We needed a community of people just to operate this private club. And so we opened up to, I guess you would say, find some playmates.
And when they found out about this place, they said, wow, there really is such a place where we can be naked, we could be intimate, we could be sexual.
If you get turned on to someone, it's a completely open, free environment. You can ball it.
Come in the morning when the sun is shining. Bring me a dream with the sunbeams climbing. But my head, yeah, tonight another day for me. Say what the now tomorrow.
The commanding view, the isolation from any other human habitation. It was exactly what we were looking for.
It was a very, very nice ranch-style house overlooking Malibu Beach. It was picturesque and nobody with any clothes on. members would come and have a buffet dinner, 50, 60, 70 people.
Dinner's ready!
And they would be in the nude. It was a buffet dinner, and they would chat.
And there's uptight people there, so you can't leave the room till you get your clothes back on. Not like here.
After dinner, they might go off to a place on the second floor, which was called the ballroom, and have sex with one another. And it wasn't just an orgiastic scene. It was something very, very free and permissive.
I remember being just totally fearful. How are you going to get an erection and have sex with someone in the same room with other people having sex? How are you going to let another man look at you making love to his wife? How are you going to feel when your wife is making love to some other woman's husband? After it's over and you're lying there, you look at that person and say, I'd never met you before tonight. Let's go upstairs and talk. I want to meet your husband. So I went upstairs and I met her husband. And then 10 minutes later, Maggie comes walking upstairs with somebody else's husband. And we all sat down on those couches in that room upstairs, and we talked until the sun came up.
The sexual flirtation that goes on had an entirely different quality to it. You wouldn't have to go to a bar and have 4 drinks and show off and, wave your status and talk about what a great job you had or wear your Armani suit or all those symbols and signs of sexual power. They didn't exist here.
We became the flagship of the sexual revolution. Sex is not something that is prohibited from on high. It's part of your everyday life.
One of the people who was there was a British doctor, and his name was Alex Comfort.
If Sandstone was a school, the lessons would be popularized in the form of a book that Dr. Alex Comfort published called The Joy of Sex.
Here you have this book recommending sex as a kind of recreation. You could cook dinner together, or you could sleep together. And in fact, he presented the whole catalog of sexual activities as a form of gourmet meal.
Totally non-judgmental. You want to do this? This is how you do it. You want to do that? That's how you do it.
And it had these wonderful illustrations that were very touchy-feely, and the women had unshaven armpits. It was very hippy-dippy sex book.
If I were the king of the world, tell you what I'd do. I'd throw away the cars and the bars and the war, make sweet love to you.
I remember reading something in the New York Times. The average American owns 2 books, The Bible and The Joy of Sex.
There it was, sitting on, 10 million coffee tables in America. What it represents is the whole Sandstone philosophy kind of being mainstream to the culture.
The success of that book shows how much ignorance there was and what hunger people had for learning about sexual technique. And there was a feeling that we were going to change the world. Not only were we going to have sex, but we were going to have freedom.
As the sexual revolution progresses, film is getting much more sexual. Everyone could see what was going on. And, if you're a producer, make it, show some more skin and we'll give you some more money.
Pornography went from loops that people would see in these little booths to actual feature-length movies. But there hadn't been that one film that was going to cross over into the mainstream.
Deep Throat was the Gone with the Wind of pornography.
Deep Throat, for all of its silliness, for all of its bad acting, nevertheless had an extended narrative about a woman who was not experiencing pleasure when she had conventional sex.
There should be more to sex than a lot of little tingles.
The conceit of the movie is that her clitoris is located in her throat. The doctor suggests deep throat.
You make it
sounds so easy.
Well, it is. Try it. You'll like it.
Porn films would come and go in 3 days. It was a cheap, forgettable porn film.
You saved my life. I'm a fulfilled woman. I've heard the bells at last.
New York was the only city that called it obscene. Mayor Lindsay orders the print confiscated.
And it got so much free press that more people went to see it.
The next week, there are lines around the block. For a porn film, there are lines of people.
Approximately 1,700 people a day have been in to see the film.
Suddenly movie stars and guys like Ed McMahon and Spiro Agnew, who was the Vice President of the United States, and Sammy Davis Jr. getting prints.
Jackie Kennedy saw it. Everyone saw Deep Throat.
You were sort of culturally negligent if you weren't able to talk about it at a dinner party.
Deep Throat was a big turning point because all of a sudden, you had your first porn star.
Linda Lovelace was the first porn star I ever saw, and I just thought she was great. It's like your first lover. It was a big deal.
I'm proud of what I do. I feel like I'm a woman. I can respond like a woman. I can do things that women should be able to do.
The pornographic film Deep Throat has become one of the most popular and profitable blue movies of all time.
It ushers in the era of what's called porno chic.
The term porno chic was applied to all of the new hardcore, quasi-legitimate films. For example, Behind the Green Door, which followed very soon after Deep Throat.
Behind the Green Door is a most extraordinary motion picture with the most electrifying sexual scenes any audience has ever witnessed.
I read an ad in the newspaper that said now casting for a major motion picture.
She thought it was a mainstream movie. When she was filling out paperwork for the audition, it said, do you want a bawling or non-bawling part?
I thought it said, do you want a bowling? Do you want to bowl? Or, like, yeah, sure, I love to bowl. But when I brought it up to the lady, she said, so you want a bowling role? And I said, what?
Portraying Gloria Saunders is Marilyn Chambers, who Variety described as a 20-year-old fresh-faced innocent who does everything quite realistically.
So they started to tell me the story of Behind the Green Door.
A young woman is abducted and taken to a private club and loved as she's never been loved before.
It was kind of fun when they got me and they threw me in the car. Personally, I kind of like pretending stuff like that. But then when we got to the point where I actually have come through the green door, I'm thinking, oh God, what did I get myself into here?
I wanna do something freaky to you, baby.
Behind the Green Door provides leotard-garbed studs lowered on trapezes, bewigged transvestites, an authentic pornographic fat lady, and a pervasive element of weirdness that's reminiscent of no less than Visconti's The Damned.
But, oh my God, I hope my parents never see this.
Marilyn Chambers was so beautiful. She was every guy's dream, And what made the film even better is Marilyn had been a model in New York City.
You are my candy girl.
And one of her modeling calls was to be the new box girl on the cover of Ivory Snow.
99 and 44, 100% pure as the driven snow. I was going to be on millions and millions of box covers.
Marilyn Chambers was on the cover of Ivory Snow that was in every woman's kitchen. And at the same time, she was joyously in these porn movies.
Procter & Gamble pulled all the boxes off the shelf, which was fabulous publicity for us. You could not create this kind of controversy, even if you tried.
Do you use Ivory?
No, it smells like diapers. I can't get into it.
My friends, the road to stardom takes many and diverse turns. Consider for just one moment this young picture of idealized motherhood who adorns this soapbox. Her name is Marilyn Chambers, and her life has become a real live soap opera.
Well, we opened all over the world. We went to the Cannes Film Festival, and, the rest is history.
So many people that are asking for this. They love to go and see films that are groovy and include sex and have a good story.
You could tell by how the pornography changed, how the society's way of looking at sex was changing. Sex was becoming not a shameful thing and something that people could do and would do normally.
This is what's happening in this country. The sexual revolution is here to stay.
Castro Street, in the heart of San Francisco's best-known homosexual district.
The Castro was gay men and lesbians. Everything was open, and it was okay.
On a bulletin board, they had signs like anal relaxation and workshop, so-and-so, or a store called Does Your Mother Know? Just all of these aspects of a subculture developing.
If the Castro had become the gay capital of America by 1977, certainly Harvey Milk had become the personification of its liberated attitudes.
Harvey Milk was an out-of-the-closet gay man who ran a camera store, but he was very involved in neighborhood politics.
Any single neighborhood issue or city issue for the last 5 years, you found Harvey Milk taking a stand, one way or the other, but taking a stand.
He was known as the mayor of Castro Street.
Harvey Milk, on his way to City Hall, to be sworn in as a supervisor. At his side, his gay lover.
Milk became the first openly gay person in San Francisco to be elected to public office.
The mayor was on the steps of City Hall to meet Harvey Milk.
It gave a lot of hope to other people who wanted to go into public life but had been afraid to, because if you were exposed as being gay, that was the end of public life.
It is well known that I'm a gay person.
At the same time, larger numbers of people in the country are angered by the changes brought about by the sexual revolution. Gay liberation was really in their face, and they weren't about to stand for it.
Leading this charge at the national level was Anita Bryant.
We all believe in human rights, but we don't believe human rights that would corrupt our children.
Anita Bryant was a singer who had a little bit of success, and she was a spokesperson for orange juice, for Florida orange juice.
100% orange juice from Florida puts a little bit of sunshine into every day, even where the sun doesn't always shine.
And she decided that gay people were evil, and that what was wrong with the world was gay people.
I believe we're in perilous times. It's because of their lustful sins, men to men and women to women. God said that there is a hellfire in which sinners are punished.
I think Anita Bryant and the folks in South Florida were just genuinely horrified that homosexuals dared to show their faces and be unashamed about it.
In Florida's Dade County referendum, those advocating job and housing rights for homosexuals lost badly. The campaign led by Anita Bryant was the winner.
It was so outrageous what she was doing that it got everybody mad, and there was a huge influx around this one campaign.
She was a great help to the gay community because she made everybody band together of all types. Straight people hated her too.
Anita is our ally. Quite honestly, she's the #1 recruiter to the gay lifestyle in the country.
When you had a villain, especially a villain who used to be a beauty queen, who's saying preposterous things and maintains that she's a good Christian, God-fearing American, you have to say something about it.
She's the one preaching hate. Welcome to the Sunshine State. Hurricane Anita.
They got Florida Orange Juice to fire her because she did the one thing that American entrepreneurs don't want to have happen, which is she identified the product with a political position.
So if you can't come to the Florida Sunshine Tree, let it come to you.
They wanted to make an example out of her so that no one else would dare to say and do the things that she did.
I have been blacklisted for exercising the right of a mother to defend her children against their being recruited by homosexuals.
And the gay community got to flex its political muscle for the first time by firing all the guns. First, nobody would do her hair, and so right away she was a mess. And nobody would decorate her condo, and it was tough on Anita.
We were going to go on a crusade across the nation and try to do away with the homosexuals.
The other wonderful thing that happened to Anita was she got a pie invitation.
And
Security agents, security agents.
No, let him stay.
No.
Let him stay.
Well, at
That's
least
it.
it's a fruit pie.
Let's pray for him right now. Anita, let's pray
Father, I want to ask that you forgive him
that we love him.
and that we love him and that we're praying for him to be delivered from his deviant lifestyle, Father. And I just...
We know she couldn't get her hair done after that. She was lemon meringue for days.
Already a handful of cities have followed Miss Bryant and repealed pro-homosexual legislation.
California provided support nationally, money and otherwise, and they're very concerned out there.
Bryant's success in Florida inspired John Briggs, who was a California state lawmaker, to try and take the discrimination against gays and lesbians to a new level in forbidding them to teach in public schools.
You need a new law. And Proposition 6 is that new law. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
This really played on all of these old stereotypes of, gay and lesbian people as predators on children.
Gay may be okay, but not in the classroom.
Proposition 6 really struck to the core of how nasty the opposition to homosexuality was going to be.
Now, don't try and tell me that it's just an act of expression between two men who love each other. A lot of people love their dogs and their cats, but they don't run around jumping in bed with them to make love to them.
One pamphlet even suggests that students may be molested by homosexual teachers, a subject debated by Briggs and gay politician Harvey Milk.
The child molester is heterosexual. The rapist is heterosexual. Do you want those people to teach our children? You keep turning around, Senator, and you're lying through your teeth and you know it.
Thousands of gays and others opposed to Proposition 6 cheered when it became obvious that the measure had been voted down by 3-2.
The campaign to stop the Briggs Initiative was successful because it drew from that wave of political activism that Harvey Milk rode. That sense of accomplishment was very short-lived, tragically short-lived.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Harvey Milk and the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, were assassinated in City Hall by a disgruntled former member of the Board of Supervisors.
Dan White had been a policeman, then fireman, and until 2 weeks ago, an elected member of the Board of Supervisors.
The mayor wouldn't hire him back, and Harvey Milk had persuaded him not to. But underneath it, there was a sexual angle. His homophobia toward Harvey Milk.
Mayor Moscone had been meeting with a former city supervisor, Dan White. A few minutes later, aides found the mayor dead. Just down the corridor in another office, they then found the body of Supervisor Harvey Milk, also shot to death.
If Harvey Milk had lived, he would have probably become the first gay mayor and gone further than that. He was sort of the gay equivalent to Martin Luther King.
Thousands of people walked in a candlelight parade, honoring the memory of Supervisor Milk. At the end of the parade, a gathering at City Hall. Singing led by Joan Baez.
There was this tremendous outpouring of grief over that. It's like the candlelight vigil where Joan Baez sang. I mean, it just the whole city, it seems, came out for that.
White was convicted only of manslaughter and given a minimum sentence.
Kill 2 people and get off with 4 to 7 years, that's ridiculous.
White confessed, but in court argued he'd acted under diminished mental capacity.
He said he'd been binging on junk food and was in this sort of altered state of mind. They called it the Twinkie defense.
It was a murder out of the Old West. It was obvious what had happened.
I blew George and Harvey's brains out with my six gun!
That verdict meant that it's okay to kill faggots still, even in San Francisco.
So many people felt so deeply that there was a homophobic component to Dan White getting off so easily that they needed to lash out at something.
On On the evening of the verdict, I got a call from a friend who was a reporter there, said, you better get down to City Hall, there's a riot here.
They called it the White Night Riots. 5,000 people besieged City Hall and just trashed the place.
Police cars were being burned, and the police, because of a change of shift, were barricaded inside City Hall, and they were fuming. And so when they were finally released, it was just sadistic.
In retaliation, they sent squads of police cars into the Castro.
The night of the City Hall riots, the police burst into a bar on Castro Street, attacking gays with billy clubs.
And they started beating people on the streets. They raided bars. They vandalized property, all in the name of suppressing a riot. But the riot was happening, miles away at City Hall.
It was a harsh reminder of how far we hadn't come as a society. And it was also a harbinger of the divisive politics that would engulf America in the following decades.
I resent the fact that they're interfering with my rights. They have rights, but they don't have more rights than I do.
Inevitably, the forces of revolt were gathering.
I see the women's liberation movement as an anti-family movement.
There's a growing backlash. People are uncomfortable, threatened by the increased visibility of pornography. The sudden legality of abortion.
Let us call it by its proper name, murder!
Things were turning in the country. There was a change in the mood.
Everything was spinning out of control at the time. All culture. There was a war. There really was a cultural war going on at home.
At the same time, the sexual revolution is really accelerating. What happens from this point on is that the battle lines are being drawn until in the next decade, what you see is an epic culture war over sexuality in America.
God bless America.